embarrassment. And I also want to advise that familiarity with the facts is a minimum basis for a decent conversation. I think that's important to say. Having said all of that, in the address, I make the point on the process of insourcing. I make the point that the MEC Maile in his previous capacity had initiated this conversation. So we're concluding the conversation. So I'm saying at the secondary level, in the department, we are resolving that question. But at the primary level, that is the provincial government, the effort will be made, as is the commitment made by the Premier of the province. And Member Ghana, ona le ntwe ngwa spedi ba re wa e gapa o molato ke kgomo ya moshadi wa e lesa o molato a ke re mashaba ka mo ba tšere la thaba mogosi ka mo le thagetse le apa dipampirini ka moka le re ba tšere re ya pele na se re nyaka o dia ka mogo le alla le nyaka ene gae. But the point I'm making is that so part of the processes. So one is a DBSA process, just to ensure that in the structure you are able to accommodate them. And the second one is, where do you get the money to fund this? And I'm just saying that through austerity and a full examination of goods and services budget, we'll be able to get that money. But I think the conversation in Gauteng must just transcend catering and just providing security services. If you want a significant interruption in the economy, the fundamental alterations of the economic relations of society can't be around catering and security services. It's about owning industry. It's about participating in the mainstream economy. It's about undermining concentration, oligopolies and monopolies, and that's where Africans must participate, in particular, and blacks in general, and we'll make a thorough elaboration around that. So I'm saying we must disabuse ourselves and think that black Africans are good enough for catering and security service, and leave major industry, especially those who are listed, to other races. We need to play in that space, and that is our intention.
Next question, Honorable Mashiko to MEC for Health.
I'm very shocked to hear the comments from the MEC. Had he genuinely believed in that, they should have long abolished the tender system and the labor broking system.
Stick to your question.
And they should never have privatized all the sectors they privatized in 1996.
Please?
So let's not be opportunistic, MEC. We agree with you, but don't be opportunistic. Ms. Sibongile Mutwari started her treatment for depression and epilepsy at Meadowlands Clinic in 2004 and was transferred to Chris Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital in 2012 for further treatment of her condition. The hospital file number is indicated in the question. In 2016, doctors at the hospital prescribed new medication called olanzapine, different from the medication that she had been taking for her condition since 2004. Upon taking the newly prescribed medication, she developed a new illness. Her entire body started shaking and her head sliding backwards, needing to be balanced to its original position. She has been using crutches since this unfortunate ordeal in 2016, and her head remains balanced with medical equipment to prevent it from sliding backwards if she is not sleeping in her bed. She's now practically disabled. Can the MEC answer one? Are you able to confirm whether the medication that was prescribed to Mama Sibongile Mutwari was correctly prescribed? 2, what verdict did the department arrive at after processing a formal complaint from Mama Sibongile that she handed over to the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital's Quality Assurance Unit in 2016 after she started experiencing the serious side effects that she went through? Thirdly, under what medical circumstances should olanzapine be prescribed for a patient with depression, psychosis, and epilepsy? In your answer, please provide prescribed procedure steps or steps that are to be followed before olanzapine can be administered on a patient. Fourthly, do you admit that the hospital and the department are at fault for prescribing medication without doing the proper investigations which subsequently left Ms. Mutshwari paralyzed, disabled, and unable to do anything for herself any longer? Lastly, what plans did your department put in place for Ms. Mutshwari's physical rehabilitation since she can no longer walk on her own due to the hospital's negligence?
Honorable MEC.
Madam Speaker, honorable members, I think it's important that we raise this issue first, not in light of trying to avoid questions, but I think it's important that we deal with this matter openly and frankly, that as a medical practitioner registered with HPCSA, I've got some few limitations in terms of dealing with confidentiality, because this is not just a matter that we should treat frivolously and flippantly, but it's important that we also respect the National Health Act and also respect the patient itself. I've written a letter to you, Honorable Speaker, and also to the leader of government business in trying to get clarity on how we, as the legislature, are we going to be able to deal with issues that relate to patient confidentiality. And I'm not sure for myself, because I'm a duly registered practitioner, would it be against the law that I discuss the facts and the details of the whole thing? The National Health Act number 61 of 2003, section 14 outlines the following as it relates to confidentiality. Section 14.1, all information concerning a user, including information relating to his or her health status, treatment or stay in a health establishment, is confidential. Section 14.2, which is subject to Section 15, that no person may disclose any information contemplated in subsections unless the user consents to that disclosure in writing, B, a court order or any law requires that disclosure, C, non-disclosure of the information represents a serious threat to public health. Section 15 says, which is section 0.1, a health worker or any healthcare provider that has access to the health records of a user may disclose such personal information to any other person, healthcare provider, or health establishment as is necessary for any legitimate purpose within the ordinary course and scope of his or her duties, where such access of disclosure is in the interest of the user. In the context of question 4HL006 and 4HL007, there's been no information provided about the consent. It is quite plausible that maybe the legitimate purpose of the interest of the user to disclose such information. However, in the absence of this being provided to the department, we may find ourselves in a breach of the National Health Act and the Rule 28(2)C of the Gauteng Legislature Standing Rules. I reiterate my commitment to the principle of transparency and accountability. However, the legal and ethical requirements in health are such that we are obliged to tread carefully in respect of patient-doctor confidentiality. are more than willing for a process in which the information required by Member Mashiko, subsection I, Roman figure 1, Roman figure 2, and Roman figure 4 and 5 are provided to the patient only to the extent of the above-mentioned letter sent to the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. I therefore only going to be able to answer, which is an easy one, the Roman figure 3 of 4HL66, which the question says, under what medical circumstances should olanzapine be prescribed for a patient with depression, psychosis, and epilepsy? In your answer, provide the prescribed procedures, steps to the followed before olanzapine can be administered on a patient. Olanzapine is a second-generation antipsychotic. It's actually classified as an atypical antipsychotic because it's not used as a first line of treatment. It is indicated for use in all circumstances in which psychosis occurs as one of the cases in this case. In addition, it has an effect on mood symptoms as well as symptoms of psychosis. So usually it's used in combination with all the other mood stabilizers. And it's usually used as an added drug that we put in the patient. And yes, of course, it is a well-known drug that has been used internationally and locally. But let me take the House through a process on what we normally have as an insert in our medicine, as drug information, and how a drug gets used and get licensed to be utilized. Because there will be instances where the drug is absolutely contraindicated to treat a particular disease or to treat a particular condition. That's where the drug will never be used for any other aspect of that nature. But there are side effects that we'll normally get from drugs. You know, when we teach students at medical school, we normally say, when you say nausea and vomiting is a side effect of any drug, you are definitely going to get a mark. So side effects are one of the things that are normally coming from with the drugs. But olanzapine is one of the drugs that has got some side effects. But normally, we also have to balance the risk and the benefit of the side effects. Some of the side effects, to just go through them, it's one of weight gain from using olanzapine. It also affects fat and cholesterol metabolism, which normally will cause high metabolism and will also increase cholesterol levels in our body. And so one of the side effects that olanzapine has is also one that can induce what we call a glucose intolerance, meaning that it can cause effects and symptoms which are similar to diabetes or a non-insulin dependent diabetes, which is a type 2 diabetes. The fourth one, which is one that we are going to deal with here, is what we call tardive dyskinesia, which is known as movement disorder. These patients are patients that normally get involuntary movement of muscles. Generally, it has been described that the movements are commonly around the face. So it's about the tongue movement, it's about the head jerking of the tongue, and it's about grinning. And sometimes they do get one of the side effects, like we have now on this lady, of tardive dyskinesia, which is one of the movement. So it's not something that is unknown, that it happens when you use the drug. And unfortunately, there are no tests that you do, except when you use olanzapine, you have to do properly a baseline cholesterol levels. You also have to do a baseline sugar levels, and you also have to do a baseline weight measurements so that you are able to measure and monitor the patient throughout. And this usage of drug olanzapine is also monitored with the effect of having regular checkups with the drug. So, Madam Speaker, the drugs that we use, yes, they do have side effects. Some have got adverse effects. You know, I'll just also allow members just to read about what we call black box warning, which is one of the warnings systems that the FDA or our Controlled Medicine Council normally gives to a drug that gives a side effect that has been adverse, but it means that the discussion between the patient and the discussion between the doctor and the patient must happen so that consent is given. I'll maybe make one last example. It's like the usage of contraception, the pill. Most of the people who are against the pill will say the pill will cause a venous thrombus embolus accident. So what we call so people will then not use the pill because of that. But we know that with proper counseling and monitoring, the pill is more beneficial, you know, for you to have the VTE accident or to have an unplanned pregnancy. So usually we have to measure the two and weigh the benefit over the risk. And I suspect that there was a reasonable understanding by the practitioner attending to the patient to be able to understand why they use olanzapine instead of the normal antipsychotics. I'm trying hard not to discuss the case, just to discuss, you know, the drug. But the redress was done. Thank you.
Don't respond to him, respond to the House.
Pardon?
I'm saying don't respond to him.
Oh yes, I was just looking.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a voluntary.
Thank you. Honorable Mashiko, do you have a supplementary question or a short remark?
Yeah, I think because of how the MEC answered my question, it's important for me to raise my question and also respond to his remark, because I have a response to his remark. I'm not a lawyer, but I somehow don't believe that in this context, that to the extent that the MEC quoted the Health Act and that particular clause that talks to disclosure and non-disclosure is strictly applicable, because I have received the mandate from the patient herself, not from her family or any other member. Secondly, should it be, and I've stated that, look, I'm under no, authority legally to comment on that, but it's my view that he could have responded to the question without necessarily compromising the patient's rights, especially because I engage the patient. However, I am happy to bring a letter with this question again and ask a follow-up question, the same way I asked this question, and attach that letter from the patient to the MEC, because the patient is literally a paraplegic and it's a very serious issue. I'm just deeply concerned that the MEC for Education thinks that the question is a joke and therefore he must make fun of it and laugh and create little snuggles in his corner behind the screen. It's a great pity, but it speaks to the general attitude of people who are leading government and how they respond to our people, the poor people's deep concerns. However, the MEC could have also answered on that vein, in that same vein, to question 4 and question 5. They were not necessarily that strict. But what I want to know from the MEC is that I want to reiterate, considering everything I've said to him, unless he says he doesn't believe me, has the hospital, to his knowledge, offered any rehabilitation or any other form of support to the patient since now she's sitting with this terrible condition as a result of what he terms an acceptable side effect, which I don't believe it is. I suppose a court of law will have to make a ruling on that. But can he respond to that follow-up question?
Honorable Shitangano.
I'm rising on section 134, subsection 7. I want to make a comment. Madam Speaker, with all due respect, I think the MEC's response was both insipid and vapid. He's an MEC. And the answers which is giving after we've asked specific questions ought to be responded by him as an MEC. For him to come and give us a generic answer, trying to lecture us on his understanding of medicine. It's not what the answer, the question in terms of what member Mashiku has basically asked. With all due respect, we can all come with our jargons in terms of our professional side, but he's an MEC, he must answer the questions. Hence, I'm saying it's vapid and insipid.
Honorable MEC.
Honorable Mashiko, I will await a written consent from the patient, and then we'll be able to engage on the question further. I think it's not something that we are running away from discussing. It's something that we need to be able to deal with. Pretense is a big problem. You know, when you pretend to be something and you are not, it's a very big problem. And it's something that we need to look at. Other comment I'm going to ignore, because it just clearly shows that I'm not at that level. Thank you.
Next question, Honorable Tong to MEC for Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mrs. Johanna Mosadi Moholo Sikwili from Dobsonville in Soweto had a car accident in August 2014, and she was admitted and treated at Chris Hari Baragwanath Hospital. She was operated in September 2014 after the doctors told her that they have to cut the bunions on both feet. After the operation, she started experiencing pains in both her legs because the procedure led her legs being uneven. She could no longer travel distances, nor stand longer periods. She could no longer wear shoes, and she subsequently lost her job because she could no longer be effective as she was before the operation. With the above in mind, can the MEC please respond to the following questions? Is it standard practice that a patient who lodges a complaint can be told that when she can come back to the hospital to be re-operated without any clear explanation as to what really transpired in the first operation? What is the outcome after a formal complaint was lodged after a quality assurance office in 2016? What form of compensation or settlement did the department reach with Mrs. Sikwili besides just signing SASA forms due to hospital's medical negligence that led her being declared permanently disabled and losing her daily job? And what systems are there in place to ensure that proper medical procedures are followed to avoid repetition of negligence that put people like Mrs. Sikwili in situation of permanent disability? Thank you.
Honorable MEC.
Thank you. Obvious. Honorable Speaker, the same context applies to the matter. I would await a consent from the patient that we are able to deal with the facts of the of the case and also the consent that the patient is willing that we are able to discuss the case in such a platform. But I also would want maybe the House at some point and the Speaker to be able to give us guidance, particularly as the Health Department, in relation to issues that relate to patients' confidentiality. Maybe there should be a way that we're able to teach or explain or model, have a framework how we're going to be able to engage in a discussion that will be beneficial to the public health without compromising the dignity and the confidentiality of the patient. So in this case, until we get the consent, subsection 1, subsection 2, and 3 will be based on the same context on confidentiality. I will therefore explore to answer Roman figure 4, which the question says, what systems are there in place to ensure that proper medical procedures are followed to avoid reputation and negligence that people in situations of who put people in situations of permanent disability? Okay, there's one thing about the health department. So we have something called clinical governance. Clinical governance is in relation to patient safety, and patient safety is in relation to issues that come with procedures that we do, protocols that we use, and the standard operative plans that we use when we operate. And also tied to the patient safety is that we do have what we call M&Ms, which is morbidity meetings and near-miss meetings, which are meetings where all academics or all the doctors who sit around the table and then discuss each individual case and then be able to come up with how the case was handled and why the adverse effect happened or the adverse event happened and how we can avoid it moving forward. These clinical governance, M&Ms, are so important because that's how we use some of the cases that we have in the hospital or in departments to be able to learn and not to repeat such mistakes, and where we're able to correct such mistakes. And when there's negligence involved, then the professional code comes in, where as the department or as a department, a discipline in this matter is the orthopedic department, the discipline itself will be able to take up that matter and be able to correct or use disciplinary processes to make sure that that event doesn't happen. So these cases are actually discussed and they set down, particularly when we have what we call near misses and adverse events. And we use a collective experience of the unit to be able to improve our standards. And yes, we know that all surgeries are discussed in this case every month in such meetings, and where the remedial action is taken in terms of situations, we normally actually do that. But that's what we are also hoping, that clinical governance, we have to strengthen it so that it also increases a bit of not a bit, it increases transparency, it also increases accountability of the professional involved. Thank you.
Honorable Dong, do you have a supplementary question? You don't?
It's only Mashiko will have.
I see there's a hand.
I'd like to make a comment on Rule 134, subsection 7, as well as subsection 90 for personal explanations. I'm concerned that the MEC is setting a trend and a precedence for something wrong. We have precedents on questions that have been posed about specific persons and citizens who have given us the mandate to ask the questions. And so I'm suspecting that what the MEC is doing is obfuscation and avoiding answering questions. And once the MEC sets the trend now, we will not be able to get him to answer any question under health for the rest of the term, because virtually everything you do in a hospital will be subjected to confidentiality. And before we all know it, we'll be told that it's not just patients, by the way, who have the benefit of confidentiality. All citizens have the benefit of confidentiality in their engagements with government. So we will come and ask questions on specific issues affecting specific citizens, and this is the answer we're going to get. But I also want to say on the personal explanation that we are going to seek a legal opinion on this as the EFF, and if needs be, we will be happy to take it to court, because this has happened before with the Premier, where he refused to answer questions on Everton and promised to come back. And when we ask him the next opportunity, please answer the question you refused to answer before, and gave us excuses why you couldn't answer, he never ever answered. And it's a very, very serious violation of the rules of the legislature and the reason why this legislature exists. MECs are here to account not to us, but to the people, and the people come to us to make
Your
them
remarks should be
account,
short.
because the people have now become desperate. They can't reach out to the department, they can't reach out
Thank
to
you,
the
Honourable
hospitals,
Mashoko.
they can't
Thank
reach
you.
out to anybody, and what the MECs do.
Honourable Adams. You press once and leave.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I grew up and lived most of my life in the areas that I'm about to talk about, in the flats. So I'm a product of these flats. These flats are now danger levels to our people, and even to the point of loss of life. With regard to the cancerous condition of the flats in the areas, Westbury and Nuclear and Claremont and surrounding areas, can the MEC please answer the following?
Oh, Honourable Adams, we are in the next question. I thought we were raising a hand for a supplementary question.
Oh, sorry, ma'am.
Yeah, can we allow the MEC to
Oh,
respond?
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay. MEC. Just press once and leave.
Thank you. No, it's not Mr. Doctor, it's Doctor. Just make it clear, you know, it's a training that you do for 6 years, and then you go and do specialization for 5 years, and then you qualify. You don't pretend to be a laborer when you are not. You don't pretend to be a maid when you are not. And I think we should be able to note that. The comments made by Honourable Mashiko, we note them. Until she brings a consent, we won't be able to answer. But we'll come back and answer it when the patient has consented, and I don't know how the dignity will be. But pretense is a big problem, and we should be aware. You know, in psychiatry, there's something called insight. Usually means that when you are not aware of the condition you have is a problem, and pretense could be one of them. Thank you.
Honourable members, time allocated for this section is only 60 minutes. We have gone over by almost 30 minutes. Therefore, I don't want to actually cut these 7 questions that are still outstanding. I'm going to allow them because this is our last question day for this term. I will allow this question, but not allow Rule 134, sub 7. The people who will only be allowed to raise supplementary questions are the people who have raised the questions. And the questions should be relevant, and the remarks should be short. Thank you very much. Can I therefore allow Honourable Adams?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I start,
Honorable Daba, the Bishop is speaking. I allowed only the Bishop to speak. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I grew up and lived in these flats, so I'm a product of these flats. These flats, Madam Speaker, has now become a danger and its danger levels to our people and even to the point of loss of life. With regard to the cancerous conditions of the flats in the Westbury, Nuclear, and Claremont and surrounding areas, can the MEC please answer the following questions? 1, how many studies have been conducted into the structural integrity of the high-density dwellings? 2, are you aware that there are buildings on the verge of collapse? 3, has the Human Rights Commission ever issued recommendations regarding the appalling conditions the residents are living under? 4, what plans are in place, if any, to completely demolish these slums and to provide residents with decent housing as per the constitutional mandate? And lastly, what is the budgetary provision has the province made for the cleaning and painting and rehabilitating of these units, and when will this be done? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, I think the question is related to MEC for infrastructure. Honorable MEC.
Doesn't work that way. Come and use this one.
Okay. Thank you, Speaker. Yes, the question was directed to me, but with respect, Member Adams, this property do not fall under the custodianship of infrastructure development. The question can be referred to human settlements for a response from the City of Johannesburg. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Honorable MEC. Honorable Adams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are talking here about the structural integrity of these flats. We are not talking about the issues that I raised previously with regards to the competence and the jurisdiction of the municipality and local council. So this is primarily with regards to the integrity and the danger that these flats are actually posing to life and probably loss of life. Thank you, MEC. Speaker.
Honorable MEC.
Yes, Speaker, the Department of Infrastructure Development does not build human settlements infrastructure, not housing, not flats, and that is why we had asked, please redirect the question to human settlements for a response from the city. That is who the asset is registered with. Thank you.
Next
It's registered
question,
with the
Honorable
city.
Adams to MEC for Education.
I'm really taken aback, Chair, Speaker. But be that I will comply. To the MEC of Education, with regard to violence in schools, could the MEC please answer the following? Has any research been conducted on the impact of having religious studies removed from public schools? 2, what is the nature of the collaboration between the Social Development Department, South African Police Services, the Health Department, and the Education Department in eradicating violence and gangsterism from our schools? 3, how many educators are absent from work because of stress-related issues? And 4, are the counseling services available to learners to deal with bullying and negative peer pressure? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable MEC.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Thank you so much, Member Adams, for the question. Just for clarity, religious studies is still offered in our schools. It has not been removed. It's part of our life orientation program. And you'll recall that the orientation program merged the following subjects into orientation program: guidance, family guidance, vocational guidance, religious education, civic education, health education, and physical education. And therefore, there is no decision that have been taken now or previously by the department to discontinue religious studies. Our approach is very simple, is that each and every school have the right to practice its religious studies, but at the same time, it must also respect those that don't want to engage in those religious studies. In terms of collaboration with the Department of Social Development, it's a very long answer. I'll give you the summary of it. I'll give you the full question in the interest of time. The department indeed has a collaboration agreement with the Department of Social Development, the South African Police, the Department of Health, as well as the Department of Community Safety, in addressing different social ills inside the schools, including violence, gangsterism, and other related acts. In this regard, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Social Development. We have also signed an agreement with the South African Police, which we call protocol, relation to police involvement in education matters. We have also entered in an agreement with the Department of Social Development and the Department of Health. All those particular agreements and the content of it are attached here. I will hand them over to you. How many educators have been absent from work because of stress-related matters? Unfortunately, we don't ask people when they're absent from work, what's the problem? So it becomes very difficult to, because the medical report that they hand over is very difficult, therefore, to determine whether it's stress-related, flu-related, it's death, or other matters. But when they apply to retire from work due to health-related matters, that's when they indicate the cause. And the indication that we have that since last year, or from January to June 2019 this year, only 82 educators requested leave to leave purely because of stress-related matters. Are we offering counseling to our learners in our schools? Yes, we do. And this arrangement is done with various social workers as well as NGOs that are supporting us within the education space. Thanks, Madam Speaker. But the full answer is here. I can hand it over and give all the copies that are needed. Thanks, sir.
Honorable Adams, any supplementary? No supplementary. Thank you. Next question, Honorable Mashiko to MEC for Economic Development.
With regards to the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, could the MEC indicate, 1, has the MEC received any requests to release the forensic report concluded by Ngubane and Company Forensics Firm around July 2017, which was based on an investigation into manipulation, tampering, and deletion of a loan book of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller? Secondly, if not, may the MEC please release the report urgently. Thirdly, is the MEC aware of an urgent special board meeting of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, which was held on the 23rd of February 2019, wherein the former MEC instructed the board, the former MEC being MEC Maile, instructed the board and executives to desist from questioning the multi-million rand lease agreement for 100, let me repeat that. Is the MEC aware of an urgent special board meeting of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, which was held on the 23rd of February 2019, wherein the former MEC Maile instructed the board and executives to desist from questioning the multi-million rand lease agreement for 124 Main Street, Marshalltown, where Department of Economic Development entities are housed, in which special board meeting, the former MEC admitted that the lease was unlawful and that he would attend to it after the May 2019 general elections. Fourthly, are you aware of 2 South African Police Service and Hawks criminal cases that were opened in late 2018 collectively relating to charges of fraud, corruption, money laundering, racketeering, and bribery against the Chief Executive Officer of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, whose case numbers are 966, 11/12/2018 and 11/2018 respectively. Lastly, what urgent interventions have you made into allegations of the illegal appointments of security guards for the acting CEO, or should I say the then acting CEO, of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, as well as the illegal appointment of the Chief Financial Officer, or then Chief Financial Officer, of the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller by the acting CEO, or then acting CEO, who was allegedly appointed illegally and without verifiable qualifications? Can I please request that the MEC understand subsection 4 of my question as referring to the MEC, the Chief Executive Officer who was acting, and I'm not talking about a current situation, should that acting CEO not be in that entity anymore, because I'm not sure whether she's there or not. Thank you.
Honorable MEC. Press once and leave. It will.
Other face, mic off, mic. Oh, I'm back on. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much to Member Mashego. Let me just say the following before I go to the substance of the question. I think in the earlier iterations of the questions that were directed to me, at the conclusion, you took a cheap swipe at me. Yeah. I will not let sleeping dogs lie. I want to respond. Let me say the following, is that my observation of the conduct of Member Mashego over a passage of time, and it's a very truncated passage of time, helps me to arrive at the following conclusion. Yeah. Is that your relationship with the truth is that of antagonism and hatred. That you demonstrate the highest level of disregard and indignation to the surfacing of facts, evidence, and science. And my advice to you is that that kind of conduct can only facilitate some degree of backwardness and stagnation. So that's the advice I want to give to you. I'm saying this because, as you rose, you make the point that we must not be opportunistic, that the ANC wants to claim easy victories. As it relates, in your version, the abolishment of the tender system. No, that's not an ANC position. Never advocated for that. Don't think that the state possesses the necessary technical capacity to resolve these issues alone without the participation of the private sector. Don't appropriate that which is an irresponsible policy articulation of your party to be that of the African National Congress. Ours is reasoned, is rational, and is based on science. And science is the one that is going to advance this country. And again, your response is just a confirmation of the degree of backwardness that I raised earlier on. With regards to the questions, has there been a request for me to release the Ngubane report? And the answer is an emphatic no. We have not received any request for the report. If not, may the MEC please release the report urgently. Let me say the following, that following the constitution of the 6th administration, a copy of the Mkabela Incorporate Forensic Report 2017 was made available to the MEC for Economic Development, Agriculture and Environment, being the executive authority presiding over JEP. This report made extensive reference to the Ngubane reports. Since receipt of the Mkabela report, the following actions were instituted by the MEC. One is to rescind the acting arrangement of the then Chief Executive Officer and Chief Operating Officer. The second intervention convened a special board meeting of directors of JEP on 16 July 2019 to formally table the report to the board, which had up to that point not formally received the report, as well as to take the board's counsel on the replacement of the acting CEO and COO pending permanent appointments. A follow-up meeting with the board is scheduled to take place on the 5th of August 2019, which meeting the board will formally respond to the findings. So we place the Mkabela report before them, and as the accounting authority, we ask that they respond, and as the executive authority will then take the necessary action, including but not limited to sharing with the legislature and also the premier. The third intervention was We appointed the following persons to the leadership of JEP: Ms. Vuyo Ntsoko as the acting CEO, and Ms. Noma Tata as the acting COO. And the fourth intervention, I addressed a meeting of the full staff of JEP to introduce the acting incumbents and to share our plans and approach to the future of JEP. And the last intervention that I choose to make known here, we initiated the recruitment process for the filling of the positions of the CEO and the COO, which process is anticipated to be concluded by no later than October of 2019. Following the follow-up board meeting scheduled on the 5th of August 2019, the MEC will then formally table the report to the Premier, together with the right of reply response to persons implicated in the report for consideration, after which point the report will be made public together with the consequence management plan in relation to the report's finding. And let me underscore, I'm not referring to the Ngubane report, I'm referring to the Mkhabela report, because I've not seen sight of the Ngubane report, only that the Mkhabela report makes reference to that. And in relation to the second question, whether I'm aware of the special board meeting, the records of the board confirm a special board meeting which was held on the 22nd of November 2018. The official records, that is the minutes, reflect the following as a report by my predecessor in relation to building occupied by JEP. So my predecessor has been fully aware, and in fact, he makes the following observations in the board meeting. One is that JEP inherited a bad lease contract as it leased both building and the furniture for a period of 10 years. The 124 Main Street lease would not be renewed, and the process for securing new office space had begun. So those were the sentiments of my predecessor. Again, we'll continue with that effort going forward, working together with the accounting authority. In this instance is the board of JEP. The issue of irregular expenditure on the lease was raised a long time ago, and that the JEP board was a successor-in-law of that matter. Hence, they should find a way forward in resolving the matter. So this is the minutes. This is what the MEC was giving instruction to the JEP board to address this question. The idea of having all Gauteng Department of Education development agencies under one roof would be pursued as it made business sense, and we are continuing on that articulation as my predecessor has observed. And then with regards to the third question, am I aware of the Hawks/SAPS criminal cases that were open? It is correct that there are 2 criminal cases registered with SAPS/Hawks as per the case numbers mentioned in the question. The matters are still under investigation by law enforcement agencies, and JEP awaits the outcomes of those investigations. And in relation to question 4, what are the urgent interventions we have made with regards to the alleged illegal appointment of security guards? As indicated above, a set of interventions will be announced after the meeting with the board, referred to in 1B above, the meeting of the 5th of August. This response will deal with both the issues arising from the forensic report, but also our approach to remodeling of JEP so that it is repositioned as both a financial and non-financial agency that supports small business development. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Do you have a supplementary question or short remark?
I'm only happy that the MEC admits that it's his party, the ANC's policy, to have workers work under labor brokers. He admitted it himself, so it will be an official record that will be used against him in future. In terms of the question, I'd like for the MEC to just come back and tell me when he's going to release the report I'm referring to. I appreciate the additional information about the Mkhabela or Mkubela. I didn't get it clearly. report. If the two reports are related, I'd like for him to release both reports. The next thing that I want to comment on about the MEC's responses is that I'm pretty sure that the MEC is aware that you may not act in a position in government for longer than 6 months. Unfortunately, I cannot quote the necessary policy right now or clause in the PFMA, especially at that level. I just wanted to get clarity whether he is indeed aware that the people who were acting in those very senior positions were acting for almost the full duration of the term that we just came from, basically since 2015, and of course I stand corrected. The CFO was appointed after that, but I just wanted to check whether he's aware that this person was acting since 2015. And then very lastly, I'd like for the MEC to commit to fight corruption, because I don't think the situation is as light as he, maybe may believe at the moment. It's a very dire situation. It doesn't only affect GEP, it affects all the other entities. It affects every other entity under economic development. Unfortunately, the information that we get doesn't come quick and fast, but we have to verify it as well. We will come back with the other entities and the information, but I really would like, on the basis of this question, for the MEC to commit that he will genuinely fight this issue, because it has led to massive, massive losses of money. And that particular entity called GEP is under a very unimaginable condition of unprofessionalism, just flagrant abuse of taxpayers' money, and behavior that can only be compared to that of an entity in a banana republic.
Honorable MEC, only respond if you want to what is relevant to the first question.
Just very quickly to reaffirm that the abolishment of the tendering system is not the policy of the party. And then the second one is that I can't release a report that I don't have sight of. I just mentioned in the reply that I'm only familiar and aware of the Mkabela report. The Ngubane report is simply made reference to in the Mkabela report, so I can't make a commitment to submit a report that I'm not familiar with. And as an avid scholar of public administration, I'm familiar with what the provisions of the law says with regards to acting. And yes, indeed, it's true that the previous acting chief executive officer had acted for a duration exceeding that which is stipulated in legislation. But that's not the question before us. The question before us is that, look, going forward, how do we want to reposition, repurpose, and make sure that we've got bespoke requirements, if you like, skills rather, to help the JEP to deliver on the mandate of the sixth administration. And I don't think that we need to be encouraged to fight corruption. I think it's a commitment we're making also in the manifesto. We continue to make it going forward. I think that corruption is the highest form of crime against the poor in particular. So yes, once all these interventions are made, we'll be able to bring it before the right parties, including the legislature, on the kind of actions that we're taking. And then the last one, Honorable Member Mashiu says, I'm taking this lightly. Well, my demeanor is such that I will not be able to reveal the burden of the responsibilities on my shoulders. I think it's important that in the encounter with the public, we are able to demonstrate some degree of optimism with regards to the future that we want to chart and the pathways that will follow to get to that end. Yes, the problem, the challenges are major, so we're not going to underestimate that. And it is less about the issues in the agencies. Well, I'm not sure of other agencies, but it's more about the intractable, what appears to be intractable and stubborn social conflict in society. And that is our primary preoccupation. But I'm confident that the sixth administration, led by the African National Congress, possesses both the intellectual faculty, the capacity and the experience, and the necessary diligence and agility, dexterity to resolve these questions. I am more than confident that we'll address the questions. Thanks.
Next question, Honorable Badenhorst.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, MEC. With the above in mind, can the MEC please, with the above in mind, to ask the member of the Executive Council for Education. Education remains a priority for every learner child. And if we speak about children, it means that every child in Gauteng, whether primary or secondary, must not be excluded from the MEC's visitations and oversight. With the above in mind, can the MEC please respond to the following questions? How is it possible that learner ratio in a classroom is 40 and above in schools such as Nantes Primary School in Tshwane? What are the department's plans to repair the schools which infrastructures have worn out, like the Prosperitas High School, where the toilets are messy, no tiles on the floor, and the buildings had not been maintained for a very long time? Why is there a lack of nutritional meals in certain primary schools, like Norwich Park? If I may mention, I can say in the whole of Easters, even Mamelodi, all those schools doesn't have nutrition. And why is it that the MEC's plans to ensure that all schools around the province enjoy the department's equal treatment and visitations?
Honorable MEC.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker and Member Baden-Host, for the questions provided. But let me clarify this point for you. When we say learner-educator ratio, we mean the following: that in primary schools, there must be 40 learners to 1 teacher. In high school, there should be 35 learners to 1 teacher. So the learner-educator ratio is the average number of learners per educator at a specific school. It's not in a class you have 47 and there's 1 teacher and therefore there is not. It's an average of all teachers and all learners in that school. And therefore the school that you have just requested us to provide information, their average learner-educator ratio is 38 to 1. It's 38 to 1, and not 40 as you allege in the question. And I will attach, and I've attached the document that stipulates the number of all learners in that school per grade, per class, and also the number of educators per grade, per class, for your information. So, I didn't want to go there. Your second question is that what are the department's plan to repair the schools that you have mentioned? And I've attached a detailed answer. If you want me to provide it to you, I will, just because of the interest of time. But let me indicate the amounts of money that we've invested in the schools that we have quoted. And the problem is, if you invest, people damage, you come and invest, people damage, you come and invest, people damage. At some instance, you must go and invest in other schools. Because you can't continue to make this kind of investment, and I'll give you the figures and the years, so that you can see that the department was indeed investing in those schools that we have alluded to. In 2013, for example, we invested 454,000 for building maintenance of the roof. In 2015, we invested 70,000 for plumbing and removal of blockages. In 2015 again, we invested 371,000 for the ceiling to the classrooms and the wall, the school wall. In 2015 again, we invested 499,000 to install stone guard to protect the windows. Again in 2015, we invested 195,000 to install new doors and new window panes. In 2017, we invested 1 million for conversion of grade 12, 11, and 10 classrooms into ICT classrooms. So any allegation, therefore, that we've neglected that school, on the basis of this, I'm scared to say it's not true. And thirdly, the department has not received any report or complaints of infrastructure default from Prosperitas Secondary School. However, the department received a request for a fence. We received a request for a fence now in July 2019. And I can assure you, it's practically impossible to receive a request in July 2019 and expect on the 30th of July 2019 that fence will be there. We'll put it in the budget process and we'll attend to that concern. You raise an issue of lack of nutritional meals at the two schools that we have just mentioned. We want to respond as follows, that those two schools are benefiting from our National School Nutrition Program, and the department has never had a complaint from the district concerning food shortages in those schools. A delivery schedule is distributed to districts and to schools, as well as to service providers, to ensure that proper quantities of food are delivered. Furthermore, a school-specific menu is also provided to schools to ensure that schools cook the correct quantities of food, and we've attached that school menu so that when you go there on a Wednesday, you must not check some when you're providing chicken. So at various dates, we provide a menu for that particular day, and that's the menu that is being cooked. What are our plans to ensure that schools around the province enjoy equal treatment? The department visits every school in the province for support, monitoring, and guidance through our district officials. And the quarterly visit targets the following areas: basic functionality of a school, leadership of the school, management and communication, governance and relationships, quality of teaching and learning, curriculum provisioning and curriculum resourcing, learner achievement, school safety, security and discipline, school infrastructure, parents and community involvement. So it's part of our business plans and part of the mandates of all our district officials that when they visit schools, they must check on the points I've just alluded to so that we can determine if there are challenges and problems in that particular school. You alleged that there is a certain school where the toilets are broken and that those particular toilets have not attended to. Yesterday, we went to the school, we took pictures of the toilets, and I'll hand over those pictures to you right away. What you are alluding to is opposite to what we found out yesterday. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Baroness.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, Honorable Lusufi, it's nice to come and grandstand in front of your colleagues. The thing is this, I stay in walking distance from that school, and you don't even mention the school's name. You don't even mention the school's name. The school that I'm living next to it is Prosperitas High or secondary. But the fact of the matter is, sir, the pictures that you took, maybe they took it from another school, because I know exactly what happens at that school. And the other thing about the feeding of the children, it doesn't happen in even the 35 ratio per teacher. It's not there at the secondary school. So, sir, get your facts in order. Tell your people that works with you. They must get the facts together, and they must come and give you the right thing. They mustn't come here and come and make me a liar. I'm not a liar. And I think you must be really sure of your facts before you speak to me, sir, because I make sure I've got facts when I come here. I don't just come here to come and grandstand like you, sir. I'm here to work, not to come and come and make people stupid here. Thank you.
Honorable MEC.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure I've ever used the word lie to her. But I understand why she's behaving like that, because I said the facts are here and I'm prepared to give her the information, which simply means that I'm going on record. And I can't go on record if I'm misleading the House. And it's a very serious allegation that we're misleading the House. There is a menu, there is a number of learners, there is a number of educators. There is a school that we went, that you asked us to go. We went there, we took pictures, we are providing that information to you. If this information is not right, why did you ask the question? Because you got answers. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chair.
MEC, the response must come via the table assistant so that we can record it properly. Next question, Honorable Msika, to MEC for Gauteng and Human Settlement.
Thank you.
Mike. Thanks, Speaker. With regards to Harambe bus service in
Can we
Ekurhuleni-
listen to the question, honorable members? Honorable members, can you listen to the question? Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. With regards to Harambe bus service in Ekurhuleni, could the MEC please indicate when this project started, how much money in rands and cents has been spent on this project thus far, how many buses were bought, from which company were the buses bought, and how many bus stops were built and are operational? Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable MEC.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I must indicate that Member Campbell has this answer. He asked the same question in March. He was given the same answer I'm going to give you. So I think you should have not wasted the time of the House and just get the answer from Member Campbell. But anyway, let me give you the answer. The response to question 1 is that the project commenced with planning in 2006-2007 financial year, with construction commencing in 2015. So the answer that Member Campbell has. Question 2, at the time Member Campbell asks the question, they had spent about 1.9 billion. By now, they've spent about 2.2 billion. The same details were given to Member Campbell in terms of how the money was used. I'll give you the same details here. On question 3, I'm told there is about 18 buses that have been procured. 8 of them were procured during the 2015-16 financial year, while the additional 10 were procured during the 2018-19 financial year. The companies, there's I think 8 buses were procured from Mercedes-Benz and an additional 10 were from Basma. And there are 36 bus stops that are operational, and the bus stops include 1 terminal at Tembisa Hospital and 35 campsite stops. The city is currently constructing 9 median trunk stations in Tembisa. Thank you.
Honorable Msika, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Speaker. As far as I understand the rules, if things was in last term, we can ask them again. And obviously, I have new information, so I have a right to ask that question. So one of the things I want to highlight to the MEC, he clearly doesn't go around. Some of these buses, you can ask Member Msimang, during the election campaign, we spotted some of those buses with AXA logos on them. In Tembisa, opposite the Betch Acres Mall, that bus stop is not functional. There's an old, battered up kumbi that the people are using to sell the permits for using those buses for 2.2 billion that you've just alluded to having spent, and yet those bus stops are not using. People who are disabled cannot even access those buses. Thank you very much. You are misleading the House. You must go out and do your own oversight, sir.
Honorable MEC.
No, it's panicking.
Yeah, but I don't understand how an incompetent person would want to tell me how to do oversight, because you can't assume that I don't do oversight. And in fact, because I do oversight, that's why they are always complaining. That's why last week, Member Msimang was complaining that I'm targeting DA-run municipalities. And I'm also attending to the 7 million issue, the handshake as well, today. So we do conduct oversight. So the member must not come here and want to tell us how to do oversight. Yes, I'm waiting.
Next question, Honorable Ghana to MEC for Economic Development.
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker. In 2015, the Gauteng Department of Economic Development commissioned a feasibility study into the viability of establishing a state-owned bank. The feasibility study was conducted by Ernst & Young at a contract cost of 6.8 million. Subsequent to this, in November 2017, a director of financial services was appointed in the department, whose annual salary amounts to 948,174. In lieu of this, could the MEC please explain, one, if the proposed state bank has fallen away and is to be replaced with another financing mechanism? If so, what is this mechanism? Two, why was the idea of abandoned after an exorbitant amount of money was poured into the project, including the appointment of a director of financial services within the department? Three, if there is an